بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. An-Nawawi rahimahullah, the great scholar of hadith, he says that ridda or apostasy is to leave Islam by means of intentions or words or actions. And this means even if it is joking or mocking or stubbornness or conviction, or by making something that Allah made halal, making it haram, or vice versa. Or even entertaining the idea of leaving Islam. If you just think, maybe should I really be a Muslim or not? Or you have second doubts and thoughts like that, that is ridda, that is apostasy, according to Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah. And so, during this time, the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, there were three types of apostates. And some scholars categorize it differently, but it's based on just combining one group with another. But generally, there were three groups of apostates. Number one were those who turned back to worshipping idols. So once they saw Rasulullah had died, they said, alright, forget that religion that he came with, let's go back to worshipping the idols that we used to take before as gods besides Allah. Number two were those who followed false prophets, like Musaylim al-Kadhdhab and al-Aswad al-Ansi, among others. And number three were those who just refused to pay zakah, either because they consider it to be null and void after the death of Rasulullah ﷺ, or because they did not want to pay it to Abu Bakr. Rasulullah ﷺ saw in a dream that he would be wearing 2 bracelets of gold. And he said, I detested them, so I blew at them and they flew away. So imagine, he's wearing 2 bracelets on his arm. He blows at them because he doesn't like them, and so they go away. This was interpreted to mean that, first of all, gold is not really a good sign when you see it in a dream. Although we love it in this dunya, that might be why it's not a good sign, because it resembles the love of this dunya, and it's not something that we should really take as something very important to us. Gold and materialistic wealth and so on. Allah knows best. But he saw that he had 2 of them on his arm, so he blew at them, and they went away. The scholars have said that this means the 2 prophets, 2 false prophets that came after Rasulullah ﷺ. The 2 main ones. Number 1 was Al-Aswad al-Ansi, who was in Yemen. And number 2 was Musaylim al-Kadhdhab, and he was in Al-Yamama. There were others, but the reason this says that he blew at them and they went away was that although they were a great fitna for those who were alive at the time, they did not have long-lasting influences. And once their fitna was over, after a little bit of effort, blowing at them, their trouble was gone. It was over, and it wasn't something that left a strong residue in the aqidah of the Muslims after that, or in the society. Also, they said that the fitna that these men caused while they were alive would be severe. It would be very severe because it encircled and engulfed the wrist of Rasulullah ﷺ. And it wasn't something that maybe was just on his hand, but it was something that covered it. And these 2 men, Al-Aswad al-Ansi and Musaylim al-Kadhdhab, both of them appeared during the later time of Rasulullah ﷺ. And their fitna it began during his time. And the fitna of Al-Aswad al-Ansi, it actually ended during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ as well. Regarding those who refused to pay zakah, Umar radiallahu anhu said to Abu Bakr, how can you fight them when Rasulullah ﷺ said, in an authentic hadith, I was commanded by Allah to fight the people until they testify that there is none who has the right to be worshipped except Allah. If they do, then they have protected themselves and their wealth. So, real quick question. Does this contradict the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, La ikraha fi ddin? There's no compulsion in religion. No. Because if they accept Islam, out of their own free will, then, okay, everybody agrees that they're Muslim, there's no problem. But if they don't accept Islam, they have the option to pay the jizya. So they pay a certain amount of money on a regular basis, and in this way, although they don't testify that none is worthy of worship except Allah and Muhammad ﷺ is His messenger, they are accepting the rule of Islam upon them. And so they are submitting themselves to Allah and His messenger ﷺ and to the Ummah, to the Khilafah, in this way. So either way, it's not forcing somebody to accept a deen other than the one that they are convicted of. One that they are fully convinced is truth. But either way, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, Wallahi, I will fight whoever differentiates between salah and zakah, and if they withhold a single camel, or even a rope that they used to tie a camel with, that they used to give to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in zakah, I will fight them over it. That by itself, when Umar ibn al-Khattab saw the conviction that Abu Bakr had in what he was saying, he says, Wallahi, when he said that, I knew that he was right. I knew that he was right. Because of the conviction he had, it's not the conviction of somebody, especially coming from Abu Bakr, the one who has proven himself countless times, Thani Ithnain, from the time that he was the second one in the cave of Rasulullah up until the death of Rasulullah, and he was the only one who remained steadfast in the face of this great calamity. Until now, and he continues to be the forefront among those who have great taqwa and iman and trust in Allah. So when Abu Bakr said this, the one who has the most knowledge in Quran and Sunnah from among the companions of Rasulullah, the most knowledgeable and intelligent sahabi, he says he was right. If Abu Bakr said this and he is so convinced of it, I know he's right. So even the great sahabi Umar looked to the ijtihad of Abu Bakr for matters of fiqh. And so even the other sahaba learned from Abu Bakr. So we should also take great lessons from his life. Umar radiallahu anhu said, Abu Bakr, you should be lenient with them. Because he knew that the situation called for great wisdom. And if we were too harsh on them, then Umar thought that they might turn away even more. And he didn't want this to happen. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he shows us the great lesson in consistency as well as in lack of compromise, steadfastness. When Islam is being modified or changed, when you say you don't have to pay zakah, or if you say there's a false prophet and this person is a messenger after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so on and so forth, we cannot bend even a little bit to these people. We have to preserve the religion of Allah exactly as it is. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, Ya ibn al-Khattab, ajabbarun fil jahiliyya, khawarun fil Islam. O son of Khattab, were you mighty and strong in Jahiliyyah before Islam, and now you are a weakling and a coward in Islam? قَدْ انْقَطَعَ الْوَحْيُ وَتَمَّ الدِّينِ أَيَنْقُصُ وَأَنَا حَيٍّ. Revelation has been discontinued and it has ended. And the religion has been perfected. Should I allow it to decrease while I'm still alive? You want that disgrace of compromising the religion on my shoulders when I'm the Khalifa and I have to bear that burden on the Day of Judgment? What could he have said after that? And it became clear yet again that Abu Bakr was correct and that this had to be done. The apostates had to be fought because they were changing the religion of Allah, either in saying that zakah did not have to be given or that there were prophets after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had to be fought, and it had to be made adamantly clear that this will not be accepted, and that the religion that we follow during our time, or during the time of Abu Bakr, is the exact same Islam that was taught and lived by and revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there will be no differences whatsoever. Nothing will be accepted in modifying the religion of Allah. Rather soon, some of the apostates began to send delegations to Medina to debate and to argue and to even negotiate with Abu Bakr and the Sahaba about terms that they can meet on middle ground. So you give up a little bit of what you're trying to claim and we'll give up a little bit too. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he entirely refused this. And he did not accept this. And he did not negotiate with these people, with these apostates. And so, when these people arrived at Medina, they saw that, contrary to what they thought, there were no large armies in Medina. They thought that because the Muslims sent out a great army to the Byzantine Empire, that there would be similar armies in Medina defending it if apostates were to attack. But they saw that when they entered Medina, there were no large armies waiting to defend Medina from any incoming threats. There were just very few, a handful of Sahaba, a very small number who were able to protect the city if something was to happen. So Abu Bakr knew that because these delegations had come and they left on bad terms, that they would go and tell their tribes that Medina is weak and is vulnerable, and that this is the time to attack Medina before the army of Usama returns. And so Abu Bakr devised a plan by the permission of Allah to defend Medina using the limited resources that were available. Part of his plan, first, was to have troops sleep in the masjid, on guard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because if they were in their homes, then it would be much more difficult to call them and to prepare them if there was an incoming ambush or an attack from outside of the city. So if they were already in the masjid and they had their weapons and their armor with them, then all that was needed to make them ready to fight was to tell them and to issue the command. Also, he would guard all routes and mountain passes leading towards Medina. And so he appointed some of the Sahaba to keep an eye and a watch and carry a small group of Muslims to defend every route into Medina. And the leaders of some of these groups were Ali ibn Abi Talib, Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, and Talha ibn Ubaidillah. Some of the great Sahaba. And he attempted to mobilize the Bedouin tribes around Medina who had not yet apostatized to defend the Muslims. And examples of those were Ghatafan and Juhayna. Juhayna sent camels to the Khilafah to use however they saw they could be of benefit. And the Muslims used them in the best ways possible. Within 3 days, to the surprise of no one, the tribes who had earlier sent delegates to the Muslims now had returned with armies. And they prepared to attack Medina with their armies. Within 3 days, the first army had been sent out to fight the Muslims. And so Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he appointed an army to go and to fight them. And the tribes, they had a very innovative new strategy. And they did something that had not been seen before in conventional warfare, that would scare the camels away. So what happened was, they filled animal skins with air. So they took the skins of dead animals, and they tied them up like a ball or a balloon, something like that. And they rolled them in the direction of the Muslim cavalry. When they would roll them, this would terrify the camels so much that the camels would run away from the battlefield. They would just turn around and leave. They would run. It's very strange because they weren't used to these strange objects that were rolling. What happened was the entire Muslim cavalry and the army went with them, of course. They were on their horsebacks and their camelbacks. They just went running back into the direction of Medina. The entire army just went back to Medina, forcefully. So the Murtaddeen, they chased the Muslim army all the way back to Medina. But at this point, when they got there, it turns out that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had been preparing an even larger army to fight these apostates. And so the apostates who thought that they would be fighting a very small group of Muslims encountered a huge army of Abu Bakr, who he led himself. And they dismantled the apostates. Right before Fajr, he sent this army to attack them from every direction. He surrounded them and wiped them off the face of the earth. And that was Bidayat al-Fath. That was the beginning of the conquest. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. Because it was the first battle and it was the first victory of this war. Soon after, the Sahaba saw some people on the horizon who were coming into the direction of Medina. So cautiously, they prepared as though it was an army. But then Abu Bakr, he told them, take it easy, it's not an army. This is glad tidings, inshallah. And certainly enough, when these people arrived at Medina, they happened to be new delegates arriving with the zakah money from the tribes. So some of the tribes had already begun to submit to the Khilafah because of the first victory, Bidayat al-Fath. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu and some of the Sahaba, they said to Abu Bakr, you can't be doing this. You can't be leading the army yourself. Yes, it's very commendable. However, this is a time of great fitna for the Muslims. And if you are killed, it will be a great victory for the Murtaddeen, and it will be a great loss for the Muslims. And it will cause only more disunity, more chaos, and more tribulations. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said, I will not stop being the commander of my own army. And I will give you an example in myself. So it's not do as I say, not as I do. He wasn't scared of anything except Allah and Jahannam and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to be afraid of. He only feared Allah and he did not care about anything that would happen. He even said himself, if I knew that the animals of prey were to drag off my body, I would still send out the army of Usama. And when he himself needed to fight, he did it himself and he didn't just appoint somebody else until he was overwhelmed by the demands of the Sahaba. And for the first 3 battles, he himself led the armies to victory. As the entire Arabian Peninsula was apostatizing, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh divided the Muslim military into 11 branches. And all of them he appointed under Khalid ibn Walid. So you can say that Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu an was the elite commander of the Muslim military, second only to Abu Bakr. And why is this? Why not anybody else? The Muslims had many great generals from among the Sahaba. We had Abu Ubaidah, we had Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, another lion of Islam. We had Az-Zubayr, we had Ali, we had many. But Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu an was the unsheathed sword of Allah against the kuffar. And for this reason, nobody else was more qualified to fight the mushrikeen or the murtaddeen or any of the enemies of Islam. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, one of his strategies was to strengthen the Muslims within the tribes who apostatized. So, for example, a particular tribe, its leadership may have become non-Muslim. Its leadership may have decided that anyone who would give zakah would be prevented from that tribe from doing so. And they wanted to cut off the resources from the Muslims, and they wanted to harm the Muslim Ummah. However, there may remain not only a minority within that tribe that is still Muslim, sometimes it can be close to half of the entire tribe who had not left the religion of Islam, and they were steadfast. In fact, some of the Muslims who had not apostatized, they were tortured and they were killed brutally. Sometimes they would be trampled by horses or burnt alive. And we'll see this inshallah when we talk about Al-Aswad al-Ansi and Musaylim al-Kadhab, some of the ruthless examples of their sadistic punishments that they handed out to the Muslims. But in some of the even ordinary tribes who didn't follow these prominent false prophets, they also handed out ruthless punishments and executions to the Muslims who remained on Islam. So Abu Bakr, one of his strategies was to look to these Muslims and to strengthen them, bi'idhnillah, and to give them resources that they can help strengthen the tribe and to bring them back to Islam and to keep Islam firm within that tribe, bi'idhnillah. Similarly, the Muhajirin and the Ansar, as great as they were, they could not fight every single Arab tribe at once. The Arabian Peninsula is a huge block of land, and the inhabitants of one single city would truly find it difficult to fight all of the apostates at one time. So it is wise to delegate some of these responsibilities to the tribe itself. For example, Al-Aswad al-Ansi, one of the false prophets from Yemen, it was delegated to him by Rasulullah ﷺ, because his fitna was still during the lifetime of Rasulullah ﷺ, that the Muslims who lived around him should take care of taking him out, and to fight him and to bring his fitna to an end without the help of a Muslim army from Medina. And alhamdulillah, they were successful in that attempt. Now, when he dealt with the murtad tribes, the apostate tribes, what he would do, he would act very, very firmly. But he knew that he still had to relay the message to them. So he would send them letters, and he would give them da'wah. And he would say, come back to Islam, come back to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and testify that none is worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his final messenger. There's no messenger after him, and you have to give zakah. Depending on the circumstance or what the particular tribe receiving the letter had done to apostatize, he would accordingly write in the letter. But at the same time, he would tell them that nothing will be accepted from them except Islam in its purity and its completion and its unmodified entirety. So if they decided to come back to Islam with conditions, and that maybe they wouldn't accept Abu Bakr as the Khalifa, or that they wouldn't pay all the zakah, or some type of a halfway mark, he would not accept anything but complete Islam from them. Complete submission, and nothing less was to be tolerated. And that was the firmness and resoluteness of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Now inshallah we'll talk about one of the movements of apostates. And this was called the movement of the prostitutes. And what this was 20 prostitutes from various villages within the region of Hadramaut, which is in Yemen. They had taken advantage of the death of Rasulullah ﷺ. And during Islam, when the people were generally Muslim and implementing the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prostitution of course is forbidden. It is haram, and it will lead the prostitute to be punished according to the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when these prostitutes were forced to accept the law of Allah upon them, they of course did not like this. So when Rasulullah ﷺ died, they began to sing songs cursing Rasulullah ﷺ, and they put henna on their hands in order to celebrate the opportunity and the occasion. Their leader was a Jewish woman, and her name was Hir bint Yamin al-Yahudiyya. And she set a prostitution record for the most prostitution within a certain time frame. And she was so promiscuous that her name turned into an insult that people would use. They would say, Azna min Hir. They would say, she is more promiscuous than Hir. Meaning, she's even more into the haram actions of fornication than this well-known prostitute. So when these women found out that Rasulullah ﷺ died, they began celebrating his death. And so Abu Bakr told Al-Muhajir, who was the leader of Hadramaut, to take an army to these women, to deal with them with an army, and to amputate their arms. And if anyone stood in their way, then give those who stood in their way da'wah. In other words, if someone wanted to defend the prostitutes, then these people were to be given da'wah. But if they rejected the da'wah, then they are to be fought. When you have icons like that, when you have a small group of people who represent a widespread opinion, then although not everybody is dyeing their hands in henna and celebrating by singing songs, they're looking up to the ones who are doing that. For example, not everybody today is making a cartoon about Rasulullah ﷺ or putting it in a newspaper. However, those who might hate Islam for whatever reason, they would look up to the ones who are doing this, and they would be willing to protect them. And they would be willing to protect their rights, so-called rights, and their freedom to insult Rasulullah ﷺ. When it comes to defending the rights of these senseless people who make these insults and remarks, they would want to defend them. And this was the example of those during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr. You have a handful of those who would step on the sensitivity of the situation, that Rasulullah ﷺ had just died, and they would start making songs about it. And although not everybody made songs, just like not everybody makes cartoons today, the ones who did make the songs represented a subculture of those who really felt the same way. So the attitude of these women had to be dealt with. And the attitude that was prominent among those who wanted to defend them had to be obliterated. And that was the reason that a lesson had to be made out of it. A lesson had to be made out of it. And these icons that people are looking up to in rebelling against the Khilafah, they had to be made a lesson out of them. And that's what happened. So when Al-Muhajir was encountered by people who did come to defend them, he gave them da'wah. Some of them accepted and responded positively, and others rejected. Those who were rejected were fought. And then he amputated the arms of these women, and from that, some of them died because they bled to death, and some of them left Hadramaut and went to Al-Kufa in Iraq completely humiliated. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.